it took a couple of years of moving from, one place to another. And every time you moved, and because I specialized then in financial reporting and business journalism, there was always an opportunity for a job in that space. And I was lucky enough that, I started off at KBC, then went to CNBC, which is a place I really learned how to be a business journalist. And then after that, Citizen called me and they said they were keen on starting a business news show. And I went in 2010, did up my proposal for what later became the Business Center. But sometime in August, I joined in December 2010, August 2011, the show wasn't on air, and I said, okay, this is what I came to do, and, I feel that you're not ready to do it, so I'm going to hand in my resignation. And so I started, just thinking, where else do I go? And luckily, CGTN, which was CCTV at the time, had just set up, and they were looking for a business news anchor. So I skipped and went to CGTN. At that time, when you move from one place to another, and they are the ones who look for you, your salary doubles or triples depending on how you negotiate. So long and story short, I left there, went to K24, where they also called me, upped my salary again. Then I did K24 for 1 year, then Citizen called and said, we're now ready to do it. And of course, then my salary went up again. Why am I saying this? Because one day, that one conversation ended that story completely. And my COO at the time, who's currently the CS for Lands, Farida Karone, and also my mentor until today, she called me to her office and said, we're unable to sustain your salary and we have to let you go. And, this is 14 years of living the best life, having a great salary, traveling the world with my daughter, meeting incredible people, dining and wining in the best places, and all that, came to a halt because I hadn't planned for it. When you're working, you never think you're going to lose your job. I think, I did a great job. We knew there was going to be a retrenchment exercise, but you never know it's going to be you. And in fact, so-and-so might be on that list, so-and-so might be on that list. And there were rumors going around because there were 100 of us that were let go at the same time. Even though, it always felt that it was just two people, myself and a co-anchor. But, those are kind of eventualities. And I remember going home, I had prepared for the news that evening. I was supposed to interview the CS for transport. And he was actually the first person to call me. And he said, what is this I'm hearing? I said, yes, I've lost my job. And he said, so who's going to interview me tonight? So I gave him the number of, the anchor who had now taken over from that evening. And, I went home and I thought, what am I going to do now? It sort of hurts your confidence and your belief in yourself more than it actually does for many other things at that time. After I got through that thought, and at the time I was a single mom, school fees, rent, etc., all these things that you have to pay, and I was like, where am I going to start? I had started some 2 businesses during the time because I had a lot of free time. When I was at CGTN, to be specific, we used to report at between 1 and 2 o'clock in the afternoon. So I had the whole morning free. And I started, saying, what can I do with my time? I don't want to sit home the whole day. I could if I wanted to. But, I started getting an itch. What can I do? What can I do? So I started Scarlet Digital, which is then was a social media marketing company. And I only started with a business card and a laptop and a friend of mine who was looking for a job, who I was paying 15,000 shillings. So that's what was my investment at the time. And I approached a bank who I knew had no social media presence, and I told them, can I manage your Facebook, your Twitter, and your LinkedIn? And they gave me the job. And, from that, which was in 2012, the business has now grown into a fully fledged advertising agency. I am now just a director and I'm not handling the business. We've got a managing director who's handling it. So that's one of the things that really came through for me at that time. So in as much as my salary was way up there, It did come significantly lower because, the agency was still growing and we were unable to afford me at the rate, that I was at. But it really, came in and made a really big difference in my life at the time. And I realized, when I was employed, there are things that I did that I didn't really have to do. And, just listening to this conversation and seeing how much difference 15,000 would do, how much difference, 40,000 would do if you put it into an investment, whether it's a bill or a bond or in a money market fund or all those things. And those are things that I never really seriously thought about. I had an education plan for my daughter. I think I had 2 or 3. I had, some investments here and there. I had just bought a plot. And then later on, I had bought another one. And I was like, how am I going to pay for this? So, I went and talked to the people I bought the property from. And I just said, I've lost my job. How can you help me? How can we, restructure the payments? I had a bank loan as well. And that was the scariest part because I was paying quite a bit on it. I'd taken it to redo my mother's house. So, I went to talk to them, and thankfully on the bank loan, it had an insurance which covered me for 9 months. And that gave me time to plan and, say, once these 9 months are over, how am I going to be able to start repaying this loan? But it really gave me comfort, and it calmed my anxiety at the time. I really had to cut down, to be introspective and to say, what can I really do to make sure I, still get going. I sold my car, which I really loved, and I bought one at, more than about 45% less of, of what I had before, and then I used that money into my other business. I cut up my credit card. I don't have a credit card until now, and I realized you can actually live without it. But because, I was traveling and I was all over the place, it was okay. And, I had some money that I'd taken out on the credit card, which of course I needed to, to pay up. There's a quote by Warren Buffett that says, you should not depend on a single source of income. And for some of us, when you're in employment, and as I said in the video that I did last week, job security does not always translate to financial security. But a different source of income, whether it is, not everybody is an entrepreneur, but you can invest early enough so that you can get some money, to keeping you going. Or, invest in a business that is already doing well. Invest in stocks, in places that you can get a good dividend, from time to time. I also moved house and got a place that was around 50% less than, what I was paying before. So it really, it was a time of introspection and a time when I had to be, really vulnerable with myself and said, what can I really do? And, just looking at how much I was paying for rent before, how much I was in my car, and, taking that money away and putting it in other places to provide for me comfort during that time was really incredible. So I just want to say some of the things that I've learned, and I'm not a personal financial expert, and I really want to learn from those who are. But what kept me going is, realizing that personal branding sometimes is everything. And, going back to see, what do I like? What hobbies do I have that can make an extra income for me? So I'm a journalist, but I can also MC, I can also moderate. I used to wait for people to call me. But after I lost my job, I did a profile on myself. I got a designer to do it, very, very professionally. Personal branding really came through for me, knowing what you really are good at and putting your best foot forward without apologies. If you're good at something, you're good at something. I want to say a very short story. My younger sister, called Cherop, she lives and works in Kisumu. She's married there. And at some point the year before last, they had a beautiful wedding, they have beautiful children, and her husband just fell ill. And in the span of 7 months, from one morning he said, I feel like my foot is not doing well. He went from being an entrepreneur to a man on a wheelchair. And my sister, overnight, became a caretaker. That means she couldn't go to work, and she had to stay home. And at some point last year, she's always liked baking. And, she said, you know what, maybe I can try baking. And last week, she actually did the Kisumu, there was a baking cake fair in Kisumu, and she was part of it. They are now making a living from her baking. So, there's so many things that we can think of. It might be just a hobby. It could be cooking. It could be, anything else. But what can you really do within your own space and comfort that can provide, for you an income? And that, for me, has really kept me going. And I've also learned that you can make money work for you, even when times look a little tight. I used to travel quite a bit with my daughter during that time. I have 2 now. And I said, so, we used to travel abroad, but now we can travel locally until, I'm back on my feet. But we can still travel. And I said there are a few things I'll not compromise on. I'll not compromise on where my daughter goes to school, and I will not compromise on family time. But we can do our family time differently. We don't have to travel abroad. When and if we get there, it will be perfect. But for now, we travel locally, and I plan for it. We used to have dinner or lunch together as a family at least once a week. That has really come down. Sometimes we do it once a month, but I always do a special cookout at home with my family, and I'll say, Thursday, I'll make something really nice, and we'll sit down, we'll have dinner as a family, we'll talk, because I really value that, and I said I'll not compromise, no matter how much I have to reduce my, my spending on it. So, it's been an incredible journey. It's been a humbling experience. And most importantly, it's been a necessary lesson. And I say that often. And I say, in as much as it's a difficult story to talk about, because, people, be like, oh, but if she was so good at her job, why did they let her go? And it sort of eats you up inside. But if that did not happen, then I would not be here today. So there were valuable life lessons that I learned. And I just want to challenge those of you that are in employment to start thinking outside the box. It can be, smooth and rosy one day, and the next day it's hail and thunderstorms. So if you can learn from the experience of those of us that have gone through it, plan to take control of your finances early enough, so that should you have that conversation with your boss, like I did, you'll be fine. So thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to come today, and I will sign up for that class.